Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's especially relevant for those of you in the tax preparation world.
Okay.
Becoming an electronic return originator,
Right.
or ERO,
Okay.
and getting your electronic filing identification number.
Got it.
That's your EFIN from the IRS.
All right.
It's a lot of acronyms, I know,
Yeah,
but stick with us.
it's important stuff.
We're using a really interesting YouTube video as our guide today.
Oh, cool.
It's called How to Become an ERO. Get your EFIN number from the channel Unwrap Success.
Interesting.
They really give you a feel for what the process is like, step by step.
Yeah, and what's striking is how much the process has changed.
Right.
We're talking like digital fingerprinting,
Right.
streamlined applications,
Okay.
and even some elements of, dare I say, suspense, like the suitability check.
Ooh. Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit.
Okay.
As someone who's familiar with tax preparation,
Yeah.
you probably know what an ERO is in a general sense.
Right.
But what are the specifics?
Sure.
Why would someone want to go through the process of becoming one?
You're absolutely right.
Right.
Let's lay that foundation.
Yeah.
An ERO is essentially anyone authorized by the IRS to file tax returns electronically on behalf of others.
Okay, so they're not doing their own.
Right.
They're doing it for other people.
Exactly. And it's not just about filing taxes.
Okay.
It's about accessing professional tax software, certain bank products, and engaging in commercial e-filing.
So it's really the gateway to a whole suite of professional tools and services.
Precisely.
Got it.
And at the heart of it all is that EFN.
Right.
It's like your digital signature in the world of e-filing.
Okay.
And that's why the IRS is so careful about who they grant it to.
That makes sense.
In fact, the IRS e-file application participation handbook.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? Which we've linked for you in the show notes,
Perfect.
goes into great detail about the importance of safeguarding your EFN.
And this makes sense.
Right.
We're talking about sensitive financial information here.
Exactly. Revocations and suspensions are serious business.
Ooh.
So it's not something to be taken lightly.
Right.
But what's interesting is that while the stakes are high,
Okay.
the application process itself has become remarkably streamlined.
Interesting.
Remember the old days of waiting weeks for that snail mail confirmation?
Oh, I definitely remember those
It
days.
felt like an eternity.
It did. So how does it work now?
Well, the video highlights a major shift.
Yeah.
The IRS has partnered with ID.me,
Okay.
a digital identity verification platform.
So this is something that a lot of people are familiar with from other services.
Right, it's becoming very common.
Yeah.
This means the process, which used to take around 45 days,
Oh, wow.
can now potentially be completed in a single day.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is.
But I have to admit that speed makes me wonder about the level of scrutiny involved.
Sure.
The video does mention background checks, so what are they looking at exactly?
You bring up a great point. It's not just about speed, it's about balancing that with robust vetting.
Right.
They're looking at your credit history, ensuring you're compliant with your own tax obligations, running a criminal background check, and even reviewing any prior e-filing activities.
So they're really trying to get a comprehensive picture of your financial and professional history.
Yes, it's about mitigating risk and ensuring the integrity of the e-filing system.
I can see that.
And if you run into any snags along the way,
Oh.
the video mentions that the IRS e-Services Help Desk is available for support.
Oh, good to know.
Always good to have a backup.
Always good to know there's help if you need it.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the application itself.
Okay.
The video walks through the different business structures you can choose,
Right.
like sole proprietorship or using an EIN.
Mm-hmm.
What stood out to me was the flexibility they offer.
Okay.
You can even decide whether to use your social security number or EIN,
Yeah.
and they give you the option to change this later.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
It's definitely designed with different business needs in mind.
Right.
And speaking of choices,
Okay.
there's also an interesting decision point in the application regarding whether to have your firm's information publicly listed on the IRS website.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
It seems like a balancing act between transparency and controlling your online presence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as you're weighing those options,
Okay.
it's important to remember that the IRS will need a stable year-round address and phone number
Right.
for communication purposes.
Makes sense.
This might seem obvious,
Yeah.
but the video stresses it as a key factor in a smooth application process.
I can imagine that would trip some people up.
You'd be surprised. Now,
Okay.
something that might be less obvious, especially for those who are new to this,
Okay.
is the whole structure of roles within the application.
Right.
The video mentions a principal responsible official and primary contact.
Okay.
It sounds a bit like a corporate organizational chart.
It does a little bit.
It's not quite as formal as a corporation,
Okay.
but it does highlight the importance of clear roles and responsibilities,
Right.
especially when it comes to something as critical as managing an EFI.
So essentially they're establishing who's ultimately accountable, who manages the EFIN, and who's the main point of contact.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's another layer of complexity with the different types of providers involved.
Oh, okay.
Transmitters, online providers,
Right.
which all connect back to the ER's role in the e-filing ecosystem.
So it's like they're building a secure network
Yeah,
with each player having a specific part to play.
exactly.
Speaking of security, let's talk about that suitability check we mentioned earlier.
All right, so.
The video mentions some pretty serious factors that are considered,
Yeah.
like felonies, incarceration, tax compliance issues,
Right.
and even prior e-filing participation.
It's clear they're not taking any chances.
I can see why.
They're looking for any red flags that might indicate a risk to the system or to taxpayers' sensitive information.
Right, makes sense.
But what I find fascinating
Okay.
is that even the fingerprinting process has gone digital.
What?
No more messy ink pads.
What? Hold on, really?
That's right.
I did not know that.
They've partnered with a company called FieldPrint, which offers digital fingerprinting.
Interesting.
And the best part,
Okay.
it's free, no hidden costs.
Free. Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Right.
Where do you even go to get your fingerprints scanned digitally?
Well, according to the video,
Yeah.
FieldPrint offers flexible scheduling and a wide range of convenient locations,
Okay.
including places like UPS stores.
Oh, really? Wow.
Just make sure to bring 2 forms of ID.
So they've made it as easy as possible to complete this step.
It seems like it.
But what happens after the fingerprinting?
Okay.
How do you actually submit the application?
The video emphasizes how straightforward the final submission process is.
Okay.
You re-enter your PI, accept the terms of agreement, and click that submit button.
Easy peasy.
It's all done digitally, so there's no waiting for paperwork to be processed.
So far, it sounds incredibly streamlined and efficient.
It does.
But where do you see your EFIN once you're approved?
Right back on the application summary page.
Okay.
The same place where you saw your tracking number earlier.
So it's easy to find.
It's all conveniently centralized in one location.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But wait, there's one thing that caught my attention.
Okay.
The video mentions that you need to revisit the application
Right.
after submitting it to access the fingerprinting scheduling information.
You're right. It's an important detail that's easy to overlook.
Yeah.
After you hit that submit button,
Right.
don't forget to circle back and schedule your fingerprinting appointment with FieldPrint.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the initial application to the final submission.
Yeah.
It's amazing how technology has transformed this process,
It really is.
making it faster, more accessible, and potentially more secure. But there's still so much more to explore.
Oh yeah, we've only just scratched the surface.
Okay.
Now that we understand the mechanics of becoming an ERO,
Right.
it's time to delve into the implications of this shift
Okay.
for both the tax industry
All right.
and for you, the listener, as a potential ERO.
Ooh, getting personal.
A little bit.
I like it.
What are the opportunities and challenges that come with this evolving landscape?
Ooh, good question.
Stay tuned as we dive deeper into these questions in the next part of our deep dive.
We've been talking about the nuts and bolts of becoming an ERO,
Right.
but now I'm curious about the bigger picture.
Okay.
How does this all fit into the evolution of the tax preparation industry?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
This move towards digitization and streamlined processes, it's not just about convenience.
Right.
It's a potential game changer for the entire industry.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
As someone who's been in the tax preparation world for a while,
Aw.
I've seen firsthand
Hmm.
how technology is changing the way we work.
Absolutely. And this
Right.
ERO system, with its focus on digital identity verification, secure e-filing, and standardized roles,
Right.
it's almost like creating a whole new infrastructure for the future of tax preparation.
So what does this mean for someone who's considering becoming an ERO?
Okay.
What are the opportunities that might not have existed before?
Well, for starters, the barriers to entry are potentially lower.
Okay.
The faster application process, the use of widely accessible technology like digital fingerprinting at UPS stores.
Right.
It all makes it easier for someone to get started.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It seems like it could open doors for people who might not have had the resources
Right.
or time to navigate the old system.
Exactly. And think about the potential for efficiency.
Right.
Being able to access professional software,
Uh-huh.
e-file returns, and manage everything digitally.
Right.
It could significantly streamline your workflow.
Which means potentially serving more clients
Yes.
and growing your business right.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just about individual practitioners.
Yeah.
This shift towards digitization could also have a major impact on larger firms and even the IRS itself.
In what way?
Think about the potential for automation.
Okay.
If more processes are happening digitally,
Right.
it opens up possibilities for streamlining tasks, reducing errors, and potentially even using artificial intelligence to assist with tax preparation.
That's a bit mind-blowing to think about.
It is a little bit.
But it also raises some questions.
Yeah.
If things are becoming more automated, does that mean fewer jobs for human tax preparers?
It's a valid concern, and it's a question we'll likely be grappling with for years to come.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that technology is a tool.
Okay.
It can replace certain tasks, but it also creates new opportunities.
So rather than seeing it as a threat,
Yeah.
we could view it as a chance to adapt and evolve our skills.
Exactly.
Yep.
For example, as the technical aspects of tax preparation become more automated,
Right.
there might be an even greater need for human expertise in areas like financial planning, tax strategy, and client communication.
So the focus could shift from number crunching
Right.
to building relationships and providing more personalized advice.
That's one possible scenario.
Interesting.
And it highlights the importance of staying ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about becoming an ERO,
Yeah.
it's not just about learning the current process.
Right.
It's about anticipating how this role might evolve as technology continues to reshape the industry.
So what are some things that potential EROs should be thinking about
Okay.
in this rapidly changing landscape?
Well, for one, it's crucial to stay informed about the latest technological developments.
So kind of keep learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Things are moving quickly, and what's cutting edge today might be obsolete tomorrow.
Right. That's always the way it is with technology.
It is.
So ongoing professional development is key.
Absolutely.
About it.
And not just in terms of technical skills.
Okay.
Developing strong communication and problem-solving skills will become even more important as the role of the tax preparer potentially shifts towards a more advisory role.
It's almost like we're moving towards a hybrid model
It seems like it.
where human expertise and technology work together.
Exactly. And that brings us back to a point we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The importance of security.
Right.
As we rely more on digital systems,
Mm-hmm.
protecting sensitive information becomes paramount.
Yeah.
EROs will need to be vigilant about data security,
Okay.
not just to comply with IRS regulations,
Right.
but to maintain the trust of their clients.
This reminds me of something the IRS e-file application participation handbook emphasized. Safeguarding your EFIN.
Yes.
It's not just a matter of professional responsibility.
Right.
It's about protecting the entire system from potential breaches.
Precisely. And this raises another interesting question.
Okay.
As technology advances,
Yeah.
and we potentially see things like artificial intelligence being used in tax preparation,
Right.
how do we ensure ethical considerations are built into these systems?
That's a really important point.
It is.
We need to be thinking about not just the efficiency of these new technologies,
Right.
but also their potential impact on fairness, privacy, and accountability.
It's a conversation that needs to happen alongside these technological developments.
Absolutely.
We need to make sure that we're using these tools in a way that benefits both taxpayers
Right.
and the tax system as a whole.
So becoming an ERO isn't just about filing taxes.
Right.
It's about becoming part of a larger ecosystem that's constantly evolving.
It is.
And with that evolution comes both exciting opportunities
Absolutely.
and important questions that we need to address.
It's definitely a dynamic field, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds in the years to come.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
But before we wrap things up,
Okay.
there's one more aspect of the ERO application process that I want to revisit:
Right.
digital fingerprinting.
Okay.
It's a relatively new development, and I think it raises some interesting questions
Yeah.
about privacy and security in the digital age.
Right.
We were just talking about digital fingerprinting.
Right.
And I have to admit,
Yeah.
the idea of submitting my fingerprints
Uh-huh.
to a third-party company
Right.
for a government application raises some questions for me.
I understand your concern.
Yeah.
It's natural to feel a bit apprehensive when it comes to sharing personal biometric data.
Exactly.
Right?
And this isn't just about me as an individual.
Right.
It's about the larger implications of this technology.
Uh-huh.
As more and more services move online
Yeah.
and digital identity verification becomes more common.
Right.
What does that mean for our privacy?
It's a valid question,
Yeah.
and one that's being debated by experts in privacy and security.
I bet.
On the one hand, there's the potential for increased security
Right.
and reduced fraud.
Right.
Using biometric data like fingerprints can make it much harder for someone to impersonate you.
Okay. Or steal your identity.
That's a compelling argument.
It is.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
there's always the risk of data breaches.
Of course.
What happens if the company storing this information gets hacked?
That's the crux of the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
It all boils down to trust.
Right.
We're placing a lot of trust in these third-party companies
Yeah.
to handle our data responsibly and securely.
And that's where things get tricky.
It is tricky.
Because as convenient as these digital services are,
Right.
it's not always clear who's ultimately responsible for protecting our information.
You're right.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to be aware of the risks,
Okay.
to ask questions,
Yeah.
and to understand how your data is being used and protected.
So what can we do as individuals
Sure.
to protect our privacy in this increasingly digital world?
Well, for starters,
Okay.
we need to be informed consumers.
Oh.
Read the privacy policies of the services you use.
Okay.
Understand what information you're sharing.
And choose companies that have a good track record of data security.
That's great advice.
Ah.
And I think it also highlights the importance
Okay.
of having strong regulations in place
Yes.
to protect our data.
Absolutely.
We need to make sure that companies are held accountable for how they handle our information.
Legislation needs to keep pace with technological advancements.
Right. Because that's the thing. It's always behind.
Always.
Yeah.
We need clear rules about data collection, storage, and use, as well as strong enforcement mechanisms.
So it's a multifaceted issue,
It is.
and it's one that's not going away anytime soon.
It's not, unfortunately.
But I think these conversations are crucial.
I agree.
We need to be talking about these things,
Yeah.
both as individuals and as a society,
For sure.
to ensure that we're using these technologies responsibly and ethically.
I agree. Technology can be a powerful tool for good.
Absolutely.
But it's up to us to shape its development and use in a way that benefits everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of e-rose and the EFIN application process,
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
it has been.
I think it's important to remember that this is just one small piece of a much larger puzzle.
Exactly. We've explored the mechanics of becoming an ERO,
Right.
the potential impact on the tax industry, the evolving role of the tax preparer,
Yeah.
and the broader implications for privacy and security in the digital age.
And while we've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
I think it's clear that there's still many questions to be answered,
Yeah, definitely.
many challenges to be addressed,
For sure.
and many opportunities to be explored.
The world of tax preparation is changing rapidly,
It really is.
and it's going to be fascinating to see what the future holds.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.
It was a pleasure to be here.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of knowledge.